In a world shaped by crisis, hope can be more than optimism. It can be a practice. Welcome to the Diaries of the Bertha Accelerator. This series brings together changemakers, advocates, storytellers, and organizers who came together in Istanbul at Postane, hosted in collaboration with Bertha Spaces and Bertha Foundation. Throughout the series, we ask how hope-based communication can help us imagine stories of possibility while staying grounded in reality, and explore how new narratives can be born in the midst of crisis. In this episode, Ilic from Irrational Fear and Dorothy Kazombo Mwale from Green Girls Platform discuss the upcoming United Nations Climate Change Conference. Together, they reflect on its contradictions, the possibilities it still holds for real change, and introduce a little test in the end.
Welcome to Cop or Flop, the podcast where we ask the questions nobody dares to. Is the UN Climate Conference actually saving the world, or just saving hotel chains from bankruptcy?
Or is COP just forcing politicians to spend more time away from their families? That's my big question. My name's Ilic. I'm a comedian from Sydney, Australia, and I'm climate curious.
And my name is Dorothy Kazombo Mwale. I am a climate and environmental champion from Malawi.
What makes you being an environmental champion? Did you win any medals?
I actually did win an award.
Really?
Year.
What did you win?
I won an award in ecology and climate leadership.
Oh my gosh.
Right? But it really does beg the question on why we are having this podcast.
That's right, because you and I have both been to COP. We've seen how the sausage is made, and I thought it might be, since we've got a COP coming up in a couple of months, maybe it's a good time to reassess whether COP is worth it anymore.
Yeah, I think that is a really good question, because we really need to talk about the effectiveness of COP. We've been having COP year by year, but are we really seeing the change that we want to see? So tell me, Dan, let's go a little bit into the future. I know that Australia might be one of the countries that will be hosting COP next year.
Yes.
And what is your take on that?
Well, it's kind of up in the air. Would you believe Australia and Turkey both have bids in, but Australia is rapidly preparing as if we have won the bid to hold COP. I don't know what Turkey's preparations are, but all I can tell you is that from my government sources is that somebody would love Turkey's bid to be dropped. But we don't know how to do that. How do we get Turkey to drop the bid? And there's no formal process to select a bid. So it is Australia's turn, because Australia is part of the Western government's group of COP, which includes US, UK, Australia, New Zealand. For some reason, Australia and New Zealand are in the Western governments. So it's our turn to host a COP, and everyone in our group has agreed that Australia, or more specifically Adelaide, will host it. But Turkey also have a bid in. So I don't know what the deal is with that, but there is no formal process to select it. And I guess we'll find out this November as to who actually has the COP. I'm sure the Australian delegates and the Turkish delegates are going to go to war, just like Gallipoli. They're going to figure out what's going to happen. And probably, if things turn out like World War I, Australia will retreat.
Well, that's actually quite funny. And it's really interesting to hear about that, the fact that we're even recording this podcast in Turkey, in Istanbul, at Postane Studio.
That's right, yeah. Shout out to my Turks.
Shout out to them. Yes, so the fact that it's going to be head-on, and it looks like Australia really wants this. Do you think that there's a specific reason why Australia wants to host COP?
Yeah, I think, like all things to do with COP, everything is filled with contradictions, right? So much like the previous COPs most recently, so Azerbaijan and Dubai, Australia is a major exporter of fossil fuels, a major exporter of Scope 3 emissions, if you will. We are like the top 2 or 3 exporter of fossil fuels in the world. We're right up there with Qatar, Saudi Arabia and Russia. But also we've got a pretty good climate story to tell about our own domestic emissions. So we have the largest amount of rooftop solar in the world. We've got a battery program that's being rolled out domestically across houses, which is take-up is currently at 3%, which is huge. The amount of there's basically each month this year, the amount of batteries going into people's houses equates to the amount that a gigantic battery would cost for each state. So it's a huge amount of megawatts going into domestic houses. So that's good. We also have terrible climate stories to tell. bleaching along the Great Barrier Reef and on the Ningaloo Reef. Our government just expanded fossil fuel exports for a gas field in the northwestern shelf out to the 2070s, so another 40 years. I don't know how that squares with our commitments for 2035 to get to net zero, but because they are tallying that up as, well, that's just fossil fuel processes that we're expanding, it's to do with scope 3 emissions, not scope 2 emissions, so we wipe our hands of that whole deal. So yeah, there is a lot of contradictions. Also, to throw a spanner into the works, Australia is in the middle of an ocean called the Pacific Ocean, and a lot of our neighbours are losing their homes due to sea level rise, and one nation in particular, Tuvalu, is basically moving its entire population to Australia. So that's the context in which we sit. Major fossil fuel exporter, rich nation that is continuing to export as much fossil fuels as possible, but also providing sanctuary for its Pacific neighbours. And I don't know if the Pacific is as excited about our exports as our resources minister is. Dorothy, what about you? That's the Australian context, but you've been to many more COPs than I've been to. I've only been to one.
To be fair, Dan, I've only been to 2, but okay, you can continue.
Sorry, let me rephrase that. Dorothy, you have been to double the amount of COPs I've been to.
Okay, yeah, that's valid.
What about you? How do you feel about COP as an effective tool for getting stuff done?
Well, that's an interesting question. I think that is the question that everybody has been asking. Is COP effective? We go to COP each and every year, but are we seeing the change that we want to see? Well, what I can say is COP has been happening for over the years now. We've had the Kyoto Protocol being developed. We had the Paris Agreement. We have NDCs, the nationally determined contributions. We also have countries committing to climate finance. We have the global stock take. But where are we? Because in the Paris Agreement, we did agree that countries should be able to commit to making sure that to limit the global warming to well below 2 degrees Celsius and put in efforts to make sure that it is limited to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But according to the IPCC, we have already exceeded the 1.5 degrees Celsius threshold. So that just tells you a lot. We have frameworks, we have countries coming to agree, we have conferences, but we still weren't able to reach the target of 1.5 degrees Celsius. So that begs the question on, are we going to be able to reach the 2 degrees Celsius, or are we not going to be able to do that? Because I think we're really running away from the things that could really make sure that we're actually reaching our targets, reaching what we actually set out to reach. For example, we have countries talking about phasing out fossil fuels, but are we really phasing out fossil fuels? We have countries committing to contributing to the, let's say, for example, the loss and damage fund. I think that was a big plus, and it's great that we actually have a loss and damage fund. But do we really have the resources in the loss and damage fund, and how is it being utilized? How are countries able to get access to this loss and damage funds? So I feel like it's a lot more talk and less of action.
Is that because there are very few mechanisms for these countries' commitments to actually be implemented?
Yes, I actually believe that we don't have very strong mechanisms put in place to ensure that we are actually achieving our goals. For example, we have climate finance, but there are no mechanisms in place for climate finance to make sure that the right amount of resources, the right amount of funding is being reached to, especially to countries that do not have the capacity in order to come up with have the capacity to carry out climate action projects. And I feel like that is something that we're lacking, and it's something that we also need to do. But also, I just feel like COP is politicized, and it's just something whereby people just come together and they talk about something, but when it comes to actually implementing the action, that is, we're running away from the bigger question, and we're running away from doing the hard things, such as phasing out fossil fuels, such as actually making sure that these funds are being trickled down to the countries that really need them. So
I've
These are just some of the things.
I've got a great idea for a mechanism.
Okay.
On day one of the COP,
Okay.
the president reads out the commitment, and if your country didn't meet the commitment, you have to stand on stage, and the president of COP gets to smack you with a paddle.
Oh, wow.
On the bum. On the bum.
I think maybe that could work. I don't think anybody wants to get smacked on the bum, right?
Just say, bad country. Bad country. Bad country.
But I think that's where we stand.
You've actually been in those rooms negotiating as someone who has been part of a party. What is it like watching those negotiations go down?
I think it's quite inspiring to be in such rooms, especially as a young person, to be part of history. But at the same time, it's more like we are being heard in the speeches, but not really in the text. So we have a lot of things going on. We have people arguing whether we should use shall or should, like the proper words for the text. And like, really, that's not really what's really important. So you have people sitting down in a room arguing for like 4 to 5 hours just because of a specific sentence. So that really does kind of like bring you down. Like, am I really here for this? Did I spend my time and my resources to come here just to argue for a specific sentence for it to make sense?
I think for people who don't know, COP is basically 50,000 people all jump on a Google Doc and try to agree.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. You got that right. It's like, we could really just do this. So it's a thing whereby this does happen in in everybody's country. So it's like it's an ongoing process. People don't just speak about the text or edit the text during COP, but it's also before that. It's also during the SBs, and it's an ongoing process. So you would think that by the end of the year, we're now just coming into an agreement to agree something that we've already agreed offline.
Yep.
But now we're coming there and we're still talking about the same thing.
Right.
Yeah.
In 2021, I was hosting Fossil of the Day for Climate Action Network, and it was the most fun because I got to hand out the award to the worst country each day, and Australia got it twice. So, that was really fun for me to...
Okay, that's great.
I guess that is like spanking a country on the bum, is getting Fossil of the Day. All right. Where are we now? Should we do a little test?
Yeah, let's just do a little game. Let's talk about past COP in 60 seconds.
Okay,
what
right,
do you
great.
think?
Let's go.
So, all right, Dan.
Do we need a theme song? Past COP in 60 seconds. If you got 60 seconds, we're about to tell you all about past COPs. Let's go.
All right, Dan.
Hang on, do we need a 60-second timer? Hang on 1 second. Hang on. Pause the podcast. Okay, ready. Hang on. Hang on. It's all right. Ticking sound effect. All right, here we go. All right, great. We're away.
All right, Dan, before we get spicy, let's play Past COP in 60 seconds. I'll give you the COP highlights and you give me the sarcastic commentary. Ready?
Okay, let's go.
COP 3, Kyoto Protocol. Countries promised to cut emissions.
Oh, and then proceeded to not cut emissions. Groundbreaking stuff.
COP 21, Paris Agreement. World leaders agreed to keep warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius.
In the words of Usher, it's getting hot in here. Woo!
COP 28, Dubai, hosted in an oil state. The president was literally the CEO of an oil company.
That's like putting the cat in charge of the mouse convention. Spoiler, the cat won.
All right.
My favorite COPs.
Yeah.
I think, you were talking about semantics before. I think like the one that almost derailed it for me was the talk about fossil fuels, whether they should phase out or phase down. I think there was like a 365-day argument about whether fossil fuel should be phased out or phased down.
Yeah, definitely.
Oh, yeah. All right. Let's wrap this up.
Okay.
Dorothy, take it away.
All right. So let's have some time for final verdicts. Out of 10, how effective do you think COP is?
Out of 10. On one hand, nothing gets done. Nothing is achieved very well. On the other hand, a whole bunch of people come with the best intentions to get the world to be a cooler place and try their hardest. I would give it, I think those two things cancel each other out. I'll give it a 5 out of 10.
Right. Okay.
5 out of 10?
I would just be a little bit kinder. I would give it a 6 out of 10.
You would give it a 6 out of 10?
I would give it a 6 out of 10. I mean, it's great for speeches and photo ops, but not really great for saving the planet, right? You know what I mean?
You know what's great is getting COP swag. You know, nothing like getting some plastic pens in a plastic cup and a plastic bag to walk away from COP.
Right? Anyway, so COP or flop, maybe both. But what's clear is this: climate action shouldn't just happen once a year at a fancy summit.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's up to all of us, but most importantly, institutional change. Let's get them institutions, get their emissions down.
Exactly. We don't have to wait for COP in order to take action. We already have organizations doing so many things, young people doing so many things. And I think we just need to continue doing this and not waiting to talk about it at a conference.
And the solution is always so simple. Keep the fossil fuels in the ground.
Let us keep them in the ground. Okay, thank you so much for tuning in to COP or Flop.
Next week, we look at the IPCC. IPCC or IPC me?
Oh, wow. Thank you.
This episode was made possible by contributions from the Bertha Foundation and the Ford Foundation.